All right, folks, we are live for the other side of cyber. I am James Azar.
And hey, peeps and geeks, I am Jacqueline Jayne. We're both coming to you from the other side of the world for the other side of cyber.
Indeed, we are. And so welcome to today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're watching us, we are live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. You can comment. Let us know what you're thinking about while we're doing the show today. For those that are commenting, we have a very, very cool topic today. We're at a new time, by the way. We typically did this like an hour and a half earlier, but we got a lot of emails. People saying like, could you guys go a little bit later? Maybe just a tiny bit later for us. You know, it's just not quite yet the time for us to join. So
it was more in Australia. It was, can't we just have lunch with you guys? And I thought, yeah, it matches lunchtime. So it's lunch with James and JJ talking cyber.
It is. So, folks, welcome to today's show. So the show's format is very, very cool, folks. So for the first 30 minutes of the show, we will be kind of talking our topic. At the 30-minute mark, we go to Q&A, comments, questions, open discussion. We do that because our podcast listening audience gets 30 minutes of us kind of bantering. And then we go to Q&A. And the advantage for anyone listening on their podcast listening platform is just join us live. Really, it's fun. We don't bite. We can't be next to you. That's why we don't bite you. But if we could be, maybe we would. I don't know. Maybe.
Yes, there need to be warning signs.
There should be. So, JJ, tell us a little bit about our topic today.
Okay, so this is a brand new, literally, and I have it hot off the press, which means hot off the printer. And the e-safety commissioner, which is part of all of the government element of supporting our people for cyber safety, they do a lot of work from a research point of view. And yesterday, part of Safer Internet Day, they launched their research results from, and I'll read it. September 2020, eSafety looked to explore the online behaviours and experiences of the first generation of Australian teens to be surrounded by digital devices and the internet since the day they were born. Just even that blew my mind. I'm like, wow, these kids have been born into this world. So they're aged between 12 and 17. And this was done externally from the eSafety guys. So they actually got a research company to come and do this. And the evolution of their online behaviours is quite amazing. And on that point, I'm going to share with you one of my screens, because what these guys did was quite frankly fascinating, to give a infographic view. So I'm going to share this with you. And we'll go through the results, because I've got a 15-year-old son, and any of you out there who have kids in your life between the ages of, even 12 and 17, this really does relate to them. So if I have a look at the first part, time online. So teens spend a significant part of their life online, and an average of 14.4 hours a week. Now let that sink in. That's a lot of time online. And what I first thought was, I'm privileged. I'm not going to be, what would you call it? I'm not going to assume I know everything my kid does online, but I can confidently say, because we talk about it, because we really do have an open dialogue with all the online world, I pretty much know what he's doing. And what I found, the hours of, as the kids are getting older, that hour is increasing. So James, I don't know what you think about that when we look at the average of 14.4 hours a week our kids are spending looking down like this.
I think it's a lot more than that. I think this number is underestimated. I mean, when you think of an average adult, every phone today has a screen time feature, right? So every normal phone, i.e. an iPhone, has screen time on it, which lets you know where you spend the most time, what apps you spend the most time on. I mean, I'm not all day in my head. Obviously, I've got my cockpit of screens around me for the work that I do. But, I mean, I spend probably 5 to 6 hours a day on my phone. So
Yeah, because I was sort of thinking, if I think about what my kid does in a week and his screen time, I think it would be more than that. But then you got to think about, then it was just under 500 people that were surveyed, which is not a bad amount. I would want to have, a few thousand to maybe really see if that was real, and also have a look at their socioeconomic backgrounds, what schools they go to, and maybe the other things like, do they play sport? Because I know that a lot of kids who are very active in sport or clubs and stuff like that, they don't spend that much time online. We're an online household. We're playing games, we're doing all sorts of stuff online. So there's a lot more appetite for that here. So I know that for my kid, it's a lot more than 14 hours, which isn't necessarily good, but it's a fact. I'm not going to lie and say, oh, yes, my he turns his mobile phone off when he goes to bed. No, he doesn't.
I mean, some kids spend 14 hours a day on their phone.
Yeah. Yeah, true.
I mean, good point. You look at what COVID did to kids, right? So kids are on Zoom, or whatever platform their school uses for maybe 3-4 hours a day.
Yep.
They're then back on their devices. They're back on their devices, kind of playing games or interacting with their friends because of COVID. I mean, I think this number studied in the era of COVID would triple or quadruple.
Yeah. This was done in September last year. So this is the thing I love about research. This is the thing I love, and Patrick, very interesting. I'm going to come to that in a second. So true. We look at information and we take it for what it is. The other side of cyber, the untold stories, we're now actually really looking at this and saying, hold on a minute, time online, is that school time online? Because if this was September last year, every kid was home online. So does this exclude their school hours that they would have spent at that time in September? This is why we need shows like this.
But the thing about online is, what is online, right? So what does online mean? Because Patrick brings up a really good point here, right? So online activities, do research, chat with friends, watch videos, and listen to music, and they say that's only 14 hours. What do they do the rest of the week? Kids don't play outside anymore. When was the last time you saw teenagers outside playing?
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. And look, even my son brought this up, and I thought it was a really challenging conversation to have. Do we comment to Patrick about football with a Bluetooth earpiece can happen if we make it happen? Anything's possible, Patrick.
And anything is possible, Pat. I think, the fact of the matter is, though, that in American football today, which is, like the real football that Patrick is talking about, not the, not footsie, right? Because I know what y'all call it in Australia. Y'all call it footsie. And
now if I say Aussie, Aussie, Aussie,
I'll say oi, oi, oi.
So you can't talk about football like that here now. You're an Aussie. So there.
So what he's talking about is in American football, the quarterback and the captains on both offense and defense have some sort of listening device in their helmet where they're getting the play called in.
Oh, God.
But imagine the new goggles. Like, imagine the new idea of sports. Think of a football player with a goggle on that's weighing out the field for him and letting him know there's a player coming from behind him playing footsie, right? Or what part of the field, and the coach in the stand can be like, don't pass it down the middle, pass it to the left, go to the left, and there's an arrow that says go that way, and they pass the ball that way.
Why don't they just get robots to do it, James?
That won't be far-fetched.
It's silly, I was going to mention the comment my kid made. So he said to me, everyone's blaming the kids for being lazy. He said when he was young, and he's absolutely right. So I tried to do the but comment, it didn't work. He said we didn't go to play outside because the majority of parents didn't want their kids out in case something happened. Whereas when I grew up, we were out. And we've created this environment of more online. So our generation of parents for these teenagers, here we are, cyborgs, so true, Patrick, we're the ones who have contributed to this online consumption that is, in some cases, very detrimental as much as it is really positive. So if we have a look on this research, 8 out of 10 teens play games online with others. Interesting. Shop and bank online, well, yeah, logical. I thought the 12 to 13-year-olds, that's amazing. Read news online, yep. This is a concern because of fake news and disinformation. Now, some of the stuff that I've seen about what kids think is real, and there's no protection, there's no ticket like we've got going on down the bottom here about this is potentially not true. Twitter started to do that, but these kids aren't consuming news from Twitter.
Oh, no, please. So here's the thing with disinformation and misinformation on teens reading news online. There's something called the decimation of information, right? Which is essentially the idea that you can't believe everything you see or read anymore.
No.
Traditional media is just as dishonest and misleading as some of the worst dis and misinformation websites are some of the big box brand name media outlets.
Yep.
So I'm, with teens that I know and, with my daughter, one of the things we talk about when it comes to news is, well, research it. And don't believe anyone. Believe the facts. So to me, fact checkers are worse than the people who write the stories. And I'll tell you why. When you write a story and you're biased, I know you're biased. I don't care. But when you're Snopes and you're an alleged fact checker and you go through and you try to fact check something that's clearly false and you kind of don't give it the clearly false thing because it kind of doesn't work with the narrative you're trying to sell out there. And so you give it a partially false, I have a problem with that. I think this whole disinformation, misinformation is designed to really kind of get us to talk about something that we have no control over. And one of those things is, do we then at that point become untrusting of everything? Or do we go back to the days where we formed our own opinions? And I'm all for allowing our kids to form their own opinions. The challenge with 12 to 13-year-olds and 14 to 17-year-olds reading news online isn't the misinformation or disinformation. It's that their brains haven't fully developed to comprehend the impact of the news they read. So the hysteria clickbait headlines to them can bring about psychological effects like anxiety, depression, all kinds of phobias, and so forth that create what I like to call a very a generation that's unable to handle adversity.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point, James, because when I think about when the news available to me at that same age, so if I go back to the 80s and I think, all right, what was I taught? My mum said to me, you read, you believe half of what you read and something else, like a small percentage of what you see. You never take it all for as it is. You always need to do your checking. Now, she was a librarian, so I was screwed when it comes to making sure I had 4 or 5 different point of research areas to prove a point. And that's been fantastic for me because when COVID happened, and I'm going somewhere else here right now, but when COVID happened and all of the panic was occurring, I was so, whether it be right or wrong, I was so happy to know that my kid went to the World Health Organization, and the other one, what's this? Is it the CDC? I can't remember what they are now. Two main websites that should be giving the actual facts. Whether they do or not, I don't know. But he knew not to read what he was reading and take it for as it was, to actually go to the source of truth and then look for some other things to back it up. I was so proud because he's at the point of being able to know to do that. But we were taught to always check your facts, like go elsewhere. Online, no one's helping our kids to understand that. So if they're looking at 3 or 4 places to consume their news and they see basically copy and paste, they'll start to think, oh, hold on, that's interesting. But are they developed enough? Is their brain at a point where they can say, I better go and check on this other news site or this other source of information? Do they know to do that, James?
So the answer and kind of that's what happened to personal agency and parents teaching their kids?
Look, that's another topic we can talk about. That's for sure.
No, but I mean that answers your question. Is at what point do we as parents actually parent?
Well, I think it's something where it's our responsibility. And
brilliant. So it's our responsibility to teach our kids how to dissect information, how to identify news, and we shouldn't help them identify news based on the types of politics or narratives, but we should explain the news from a position of something bad happened a long time ago.
Yeah.
Because of that bad thing, some people suffered. Period.
But I find that you're absolutely right. And look, everyone's in their own situations, and I'm not in everyone's homes. Promise I'm not watching everybody. Haven't got time. But to have an open dialogue and to have an understanding of what's going on. There are people I know in my world, and James, you might have these people in your world too, who say, it's not my job to make sure the internet's safe. And that comes from ignorance.
But it's not Facebook and Twitter's job either. This whole internet misinformation, disinformation feels like when parents were uncomfortable having the sex ed conversation with their kids, so they forced the public school to do it, and some awkward 60-some-year-old teacher had to sit there with kids and explain sex ed to them.
Yep, exactly.
And now we're trying to pass off the buck to Twitter and Facebook, and
I don't think so. I think it's in my opinion, in my experience, there has been a ignorance, and it is because they don't know what they don't know. And I think if there was, this is about awareness. You know, I'm all for the human element of online and cybersecurity, and the other side of cyber is all about people. And because they've heard it somewhere that it's Facebook's responsibility or Twitter's responsibility. But I wonder if anyone's actually said, and for people listening, this is an important thing. If you are an online person, if you are connected to the internet in any way, shape or form, what you do on there is your responsibility, nobody else's. There aren't police online. There isn't anything to be able to guide you. So you need to actually look for information. You need to find the solutions, and they're out there. You can type into Google, keep my kids safe online, and get a ton of resources. The eSafety, esafety.gov.au, even if you're in America, doesn't matter. This resource is extraordinary because it actually has a section for parents to empower them to have a conversation, talk about these things. Or for the kids, here's what you should be doing. Here's what what your responsibility is. So it's my kids' responsibility not to do any illegal things online or take photos and send them to people, or the sexting that goes on. It's his responsibility, and it's my responsibility to educate him in that environment. That's my opinion, jumping off my soapbox. But you're right, James, parents have a responsibility, but no one's helping the parents enough to really let them know that.
But no one's really going to tee it up for parents. All right. Life isn't
Why
fair.
not?
But let's have the conversation. I mean, I think we're kind of going away a little bit from what we're talking about. I think it all comes back down to this, right? One thing is true is you're never going to get teed up.
No.
You're never, as a parent, there's no official parenting degree that you can go and get. There's no official parent training, right? We're kind of empowered as human beings to take care of our own, and it's instinctive. When my daughter was born, I was 21 years old, just shy of 22.
Baby.
I had just been discharged from the military.
Oh.
Right? So it was, I wasn't ready.
But I think we're ever ready.
But it came natural. She was my daughter. So I'm going to take care of her. I'm going to look out for her. I'm going to do all the things that I can do to protect and defend her every single day I'm alive for as long as I can.
Yep.
Right? So it's instinctive. Right? And you learn, you make mistakes and you learn. Now, the internet has afforded us something that our parents and our grandparents and all of the generations before them did not have. The access to information to where when something happens, we go on DuckDuckGo, right? We search for it. DuckDuckGo is a better search engine. We go to DuckDuckGo. We search for it. We get results. We read them. We identify what we need to do, and we go about doing it.
However, is that because we're in the world we're in, James? I've always been in the tech world. I've always been an early adopter. I leased a Toshiba laptop when they first came out, and it was $9,000 to lease it. I couldn't even afford to buy it. Is it because we're in that world that we have an awareness that is intrinsic? That is, if I was a farmer, I'd have intrinsic knowledge about soil, weather, conditions. I'm not. So if I want to do a vegetable garden, I need to actually research that because I don't know. So I'm wondering.
But that's generational. I mean, that's kind of part of the Industrial Revolution, right? When commerce switched from farming to industry, to factories, to warehouses, to a different set of manual labor, that kind of took us from a whole different place. And what that did to us is it really kind of brought together we lost our survival instincts and we gained a different type of thinking instincts. And that's almost DNA, right? I mean, a fetus, from the moment it's a fetus, from the moment it's formed and the cells go from 2 cells to 4 cells to 8 cells to 16 to 32 to 64 to 128 to 256, and
this is the other side of cyber, talking about cells now, people.
So that aspect of it, right, when that happens, the human is intertwined in those cells. They get survival skills from us, from the mom and the dad, from the 2 conceiving adults that are conceiving this child. And so keeping that in mind, you're kind of coming almost pre-programmed with something.
Yep.
So early on in the centuries before the Industrial Revolution, it was all farming. Now we're comfortable. We're living a very comfortable lifestyle.
Yeah, of course.
And because of that, our kids come out. Think about it. If you hand a kid today who's a year and a half old a smartphone, they instinctively know what to do.
Exactly.
Now, are they really smart, or is that instinctively part of their DNA because you and I learned how to do that?
I believe it's part of their DNA because there's no other reason why they'd know what to do.
Right. I mean, scientifically, if you study it and you go back generations, there's a very interesting scientific study to go with it.
Yeah.
So,
But my thought is more about right now, if I was a parent who did not work in the field of technology, if I was I owned a health foods shop, that is my field of knowledge. That is where my world is, and that's what I know. So if someone came to me and said, oh, JJ, what can I do? I'm not feeling the best. I've got tummy issues. I'd say, here, try this, because that's my world. I would know about the things in that world of owning a health food store. I wouldn't necessarily understand what we do because we spend our lives in tech. We know the dangers online. I mean, one of these results for negative experiences online, 4 out of 10 kids in this survey had a negative online experience in the 6 months leading up to September. So this is when they all shifted online and did more remote schooling. Is it something that these kids are online now, their parents are not experiencing that same level of just getting it, so to speak, for technology? They're just not getting it. And how do we go about talking to them about what this means? Because it's not in their world. They're a consumer of technology. Then the parents aren't in it. They don't have the knowledge that you and I have, James. They just don't.
So I don't know much about health food, obviously. People look at me, realize I enjoy eating. I don't necessarily know what a healthy diet is.
But if you wanted to,
there are 2 things I can do if I want to. You're right.
Yeah.
I can go online, do a DuckDuckGo search. That's a search engine for people who don't know. It's a better one than the one that starts with a G and ends with a E.
Gobble, gobble.
Right? Googly. And it's better than Googly because it doesn't have an algorithm and it doesn't sell your information. So you get actual, unfiltered, pure results, like Googly before Googly became evil.
Yeah.
And we're so going to get banned on YouTube now. It's so funny. But there's the other aspect of it, which is I go and I search and I read, or I go to an expert nutritionist or dietitian and they tell me, James, you can't eat pizza and hamburgers and French fries. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I was born in this world for eating hamburgers, pizza, and French fries and chowing it down with Coke Zero and having a brownie for dessert. I feel like God put me on earth to do those things. And
that's okay. This is the point. That's okay. It's not in your world to be thinking about other things. So even, and it might sound odd, and I know we're coming to the end of our live podcast section of what we're doing, it is unfair of us to assume that parents or caregivers who are not working in the world of technology to actually understand that they can go to a search engine of their choice and find out what they can do. They don't even know that exists. And whilst you and I think, how can they not? They don't. There is a lot of them who don't, because it is not part of their DNA, brain, intuition, makeup, whatever you want to call it. So you and I, we have a responsibility to be able to say to people, if you have kids in your world, 4 out of 10 of them in that age group have had a negative experience online at some point last year. So you've got to talk to them. And that is for me, that's the point of all of this. As cybersecurity professionals, we really do need to just understand that there are so many people out there who don't know those basic steps to take to protect their kids online conversations.
So I'll take that and I'll agree with the premise of what you're saying, is that some parents don't know.
No, they don't.
At the same time, when I don't know something, I try to learn it. And I feel like sometimes some parents, they don't care to learn it. It's good for them sometimes to be in obscurity.
Yep. So I think what we
top
could do,
negative. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, the top negative online experience was going to say, thank you. 3 out of 10 experienced unwanted contact, and 2 out of 10 received inappropriate material.
These numbers are too low. I don't trust this.
Yeah, I'm going to look into it a lot more. That's for sure.
I know it's the eGov, kind of like it's the Australian government, and by God, I pray for a day when our country can run with a compromising, decent government that cares for the people like the good folks over in Australia do. Big fan of your prime minister. Big fan. Love that man. God bless him, and God give him more power to keep fighting the good fight that he's fighting. But these numbers are low. They're low because we know they're low, right? So when you talk about child safety, right, one of the aspects of child safety is the unwanted contact. And in last week, when we did the cyberbullying episode and we talked about Chloe's Law, we talked a little bit about cyberbullying. And cyberbullying was significant simply because cyberbullying allowed people to contact and initiate contact with others. And with kids, sexual exploitation online is really serious. I mean, it is really serious. The Dolphins have taken over our broadcast again. JJ has left us for just a moment. She'll be right back. The Dolphins have taken over our lines of communication and interrupted our internet connection and how JJ actually logs into these the streaming platform that we're using on StreamYard. So she'll be right back. But while we wait for her to come back, I will say that Teens Digital Lives, kind of carrying off of last week's cyberbullying discussion, kids have a need to have rules in place, and those rules are critical. You're back. So Dolphins.
Seriously, that's 2 weeks in a row. Now, do we need to wrap up for our podcast, people?
We do. And what we'll do here real quick is I'll just finish my thought, and then we'll wrap it up here for our folks. But I will say that we as adults and kids who receive the type of messages online that are inappropriate, that we wouldn't really get in our time because we weren't really online as much. And when we did go online, we were already in our teens, and that kind of gives away my age, but I don't give a crap. It's different now, and the perverts have gone so much better at understanding where kids are and how to act like a kid and how to make them feel like they're a kid to earn their trust. So it's really hyper vigilant for parents to look at the apps your kids use beyond Snapchat and TikTok and Instagram, but to go into Roblox or Fortnite and all these games they're playing, go into the messaging center and see who they're messaging. And if you see something that doesn't make sense, block that person. Your kids have no right for privacy.
I'm going to talk about this again when we come back for our comments and stuff.
Absolutely. So for all of those tuning in on your favorite podcast listening platform, thank you so much for listening to the other side of cyber. We're now going to go back to our live studio audience. Well, not really. We're kind of live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. You can tune in every Wednesday at 12:30 Sydney time. And for those in the U.S. who are listening, it's Tuesday nights at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So you can tune in to the show then. We're also going to be starting our own little thing on Clubhouse. So you guys can tune into our little, if you're not on Clubhouse, contact either myself or JJ, and we'll be glad to get you on as we start our own room there, kind of in continuation to what we do here on the other side of cyber. So with that being said, to the folks listening, stay cyber safe.
Yes. Bye.
All right, crowd. those
Hey, you.
listening, those watching, those
Yeah.
with us here on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. Patrick
Yeah,
here
let's
said we
say,
are all.
oh,
Patrick said we are cyborgs, and I thought that was really funny. I'm like, we are cyborgs. We're gonna be cyborgs, right? Like that's bound to happen at one point or another. But yeah, it's a very, very interesting time period now, isn't it?
it is. Look, I've got a challenge for any person in the live or listening after on YouTube, wherever they're listening. My challenge is if your kids are playing games online, no matter what it is, you don't have to do what I do. And I play as much online with games as my kid does, and we play together. That's different and that's not usual. However, if your kids are playing online, you need to go and actually say, fake it if you need to. What is this? Show me what's going on. This is amazing. I need to learn. Find out what they're doing. Sit with them and actually watch them. And even if you want to, say, can you teach me how to play this? You'll probably suck at it. You'll be awful. You'll hate it. You'll wish you were having a glass of wine at the table doing something else. To do that enables you to have a conversation. And if you can have a conversation, thank you, LinkedIn user. It is a cool color scheme.
That is Daniel. That is the man with the master plan. That is Daniel Sergile, the man. He's trying to be anonymous, but he can't hide from me. He can't hide from me. Daniel knows.
You can hide from me, Daniel. So good job. Good job. But yeah, actually go play. Go find out what they're doing. You don't need to do it every day. You don't need to become a gamer. Just find out, because that's how you can see. Ask questions. Is there a chat feature on this game? How does that work? Just ask questions. And your kids, let me tell you, they'll be more than happy to share. And if they're very secretive and very unwilling, that could be a red flag that you might want to look into a bit more. What do you think about that approach, James?
Well, so I think, parents, we tend to treat our teenagers like adults because we feel like they use a computer and so forth, and that's all good and dandy, but as parents they don't have a right for privacy, and they shouldn't. I think this is Daniel again, if I'm not mistaken, talking about thoughts on kids using a VR. So here's the thing about this, Daniel, that's such a good dilemma, right? Because VR is unbelievable. If you haven't done it, it's great. Kids using it, it's got to be in the right situation. Like, I don't know that a lot. Daniel, you may correct me. I'm not as familiar with it, but does VR today have chat rooms and conversations in them, or are they predominantly kind of like a one-person game, kind of like the old school Atari, only in VR?
I'm searching that as well.
Like, I like kids using VR. I actually think kids on VR is better than them. Chat. So there is VR chat on all games, or is it kind of like an app or a feature within the VR ecosystem?
VR chat has extensive support for a large number of VR headsets and accessories, including Oculus, Steam VR compatible headsets, blah, 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 blah. So yeah, in the in multiplayer games, Oculus Quest is the devil. Yes, they have chats. There you go.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Here's a new dilemma for cybersecurity people. How do we defend VR chats? I wonder if there's a way. I wonder if they have parental controls within the chat to block out some words, and so forth. Daniel goes on. It's a main feature. I'm gonna have to send Daniel a link so he can jump on this.
Online experience such as Rec Room or VR chat allow players to talk and play with people from all over the world. Oh, get this, but should be monitored by parents. How is a parent supposed to monitor a virtual reality chat?
Okay, here we go. You ready for the catch? Oculus is owned by evil Facebook. Oh Lord! All right, Daniel, thanks for just.
And I've just read there's a there's a site called Cyber Safe Kids,
Yeah,
And
I know the site. So,
yeah,
I mean, I think the one thing about the chat in VR is, do you have parental controls? And if you do have parental controls, can you block out like profanity and sexually explicit talk from the chat so your kids aren't a part of it? But it's the new frontier, right? It used to be that we didn't know what kids were doing on Yahoo Messenger.
yeah.
All right,
Well,
Daniel says they can cast to the TV for parents to watch.
but they're not going to watch. They should be able to block it from even occurring. This is the thing that wow, my brain is just doing a million things.
Nope. So we're dealing with a very interesting thing here because VR, I think, is the next best thing. It's better than kids being buried in the phone, right? Because at least kids have to be standing and active a little bit so their bodies are working. But at the same time, you've got some parental issues there and some parental issues.
What about their brains? I'd like to talk to a neuroscientist who could tell me if VR use is going to affect the growth and development of a teenage brain. Like, can you imagine if you actually spent too much time in the VR world, you'd lose touch with being able to work in reality. COVID has put us in a remote world, and we actually do struggle to go out and meet people and be in a social environment because we're not used to it. So you can't tell me that if a mobile phone causes damage and can change things, that VR wouldn't have an adverse effect, prolonged use, at-home use, everyday use for a teenager.
So I'm sure everything does that, right? I'm sure everything has some sort of adverse use. But it used to be said that kids reading comic books would create an alternative reality for a child. And that's reading. And today we're like, as long as my kid's reading something, even if it's a comic book, I'm happy because at least he's not on his phone. So, so are we scientifically almost looking at science to study stuff where VR is just part of the future? There's no avoiding that, right? So I think the solution to this is, how do we develop more tools and understanding of VR, and how do we create parental controls around it so that it's safe?
Okay, I have an idea. This is a multi-gazillion-dollar idea. Buy your VR headset and all of your devices that your kids use that are attached to a reward system driven by the parents. And if the kid's doing their homework, their chores, and being a decent human, don't put clean your room, because they just will never be on their devices and it won't be worth it. They're going to go through a stage of disgusting room behavior. And they earn the right by getting points into that system, which actually enables the device for use. So you come up with, all right, you've got 100 points to give you this amount of time across your devices in a week, and you've got to earn that from the work you did last week.
So here's...
Oh, LinkedIn news.
So funny story. My 8-year-old asked me if I knew what a furry was. He then goes on to explain that he joined the furry party. After speaking with him, I found out a furry party is where kids have animal avatars. Not sure who named that, but they knew what they were doing to parents, because my heart stopped when he first asked.
Oh, that is gold.
Oh, that is comic gold for sure. A furry party, whoever named it that, is the same kids who live in a house with a pineapple at the front door.
All ours have to read for the same time they are on screens. Yes. See? But then again, James's point before, it's parenting, and that is hard. Kids, so if my kid wants 3 hours on, I don't know, whatever game he's playing at the time, he's got to have earned the right to have that time by just contributing, not doing extra things, but just doing the right thing. Because James, to your point, VR is extraordinary. VR is really a remarkable technology, And who are we to say, no, our kids shouldn't have it because they'll be using it every day?
I'll tell you.
They should be using it, but not every day.
So I'll tell you a funny story about VR. Last summer of 19, I took a group of 10 CISOs with me to Israel for the Tel Aviv University Cyber Week.
Okay.
And Tel Aviv University Cyber Week is one of my favorite events to go to.
Why?
It's fun. I love Israel, but I love a lot of the talks that go on there. I love the ecosystem that exists in Israel. We were only at the event for half a day. We saw Prime Minister Netanyahu, we saw Gil Schwade, and a few others, and that's about it.
Okay.
Speak, and then we left. But one evening, I took the entire group to a restaurant, and we brought VR glasses that do cybersecurity awareness training.
No.
Yeah, and the instructor on the VR training is none other than the legendary Idon Naor. And if you don't know Idon Naor, he just started Security Joe's, just wrote a book called The Standard Hacker. It's in Hebrew, so you can't really get it, but we should tag Idon Naor in this, but it walks you through kind of like you put them on, and you're walking through and you're going through a regular day in the office, and you're getting all these different things that are happening that could cause you to become a victim of, phishing, spear phishing, all these different levels of cyber threats that can occur. Now, I'm in a room with 10 CISOs from all over the country. In fact, some of them from all over the world. And we had a few people who joined us who were from Colombia as well. My good friends over in Colombia who joined us for that. And they were all sitting with the VR. And it was the one time where the room was completely quiet as people were intertwined. They sunk into the VR experience. They were in it. I've got pictures of people just in it. And they loved every minute of it. And when they took the VR off, they were just so into it. I mean, and I did it myself. And I'll tell you something, I wanted to do it like 3 more times.
That's interesting. I've just Googled, I've searched on my chosen search engine for cybersecurity training on VR. Very interesting.
It's very, very cool. And Idon Naor, who's an unbelievable cybersecurity researcher and white hat hacker, does some amazing work. Having him in there, to me, was very, very cool because I love the work that Idon does. And so it was a blast.
That's amazing. That is, yeah, wow. So when we're going to do some more research into the numbers of that report from before. And yeah, I'd like to be able to see all the questions that were asked, and because just based on the kids I know, James, these numbers don't add up.
No, they don't. They definitely don't add up.
There were 600 odd kids asked, so that's a decent amount. That's enough to, because these guys don't let research out unless it can be what do you call it?
Well, no, my question is, when the kids answered this, when they did the research, when they did the survey, how honest were the kids about this?
Well, that's the thing. I think I'm telling little white lies about how long I'm on certain apps, Clubhouse at the moment. Really, you do.
Brilliant. Well, folks, I think that's it for our show today.
Yeah, thank you, guys. It's been really, really. Look, I always love our conversations, James, because we never really know where they'll end up, and we went to some very interesting places today.
Well, I think we always do, but that's the beauty of the show, folks. This is our new time going forward: 8:30 Eastern Standard Time on every Tuesday for our U.S. folks. 12:30 Sydney time, Sydney or Melbourne. They're in the same time zone. Is Adelaide in the same time zone?
No, we're half an hour.
And the Dolphins are at it again. But I think they're half an hour later or earlier than Sydney. Yeah, or half an hour later than Sydney, one of those things. But JJ did freeze up again, and her face did freeze in a very flattering manner. I'll kind of take off the freeze until JJ is back here. So we are live every single week at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time, 12:30 Wednesdays, Sydney time for our Australia and APAC crowd, the other side of cyber, myself, James Azar, and JJ. I am on LinkedIn live a lot, meaning I'm live as James on the CyberHub Podcast CISO Talk page on LinkedIn, or the CyberHub Podcast page on both Facebook and YouTube every single day at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time with the Practitioner Brief. Tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, the Tech Town Square with myself and Eddie will be live right here. The Tech Town Square, an open town square discussion around technology. And it's the new town square. Talk about anything you want. We don't really care. As long as you're respectful, as long as you're willing to argue your idea, we're good with it. And you can also catch me, like I said, tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I have to say bye on behalf of JJ. She is having a hard time reconnecting to join us, and we're done and out of time. So for those tuning in live, thanks so much for tuning in live. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure to turn on your notifications so you know when we go live. You can do that on our pages by just simply hitting the notification bell, or on Facebook, just notify me when we go live. Same thing on LinkedIn. You can just hit notify me and it'll let you know. That's it. On behalf of JJ, who is absent thanks to evil dolphins, and behalf of myself, James Azar, thanks so much for watching. Thank you for tuning in, folks, and stay